Awesome, thank you. Yeah, so tons of growth. We're seeing it, and we likely anticipate it to grow, even with with some of the like state and national incentives being pared back. I do still think that, you know, consumers are choosing them. 8,000 electric vehicles in our territory is about one per residential meter, or 1 per 10 residential meters. So maybe about 10% of residential EV adoption as well. And we think we have a couple of really large commercial fleets as well that have electrified. So if you want to go to the next slide. This is a quick snapshot from that same state database that it's that like Atlas EV portal thing that they show, and this shows the charging station growth in our territory. Publicly available charging stations, level 2 and level 3. Did some quick math, and that's about 54 member electric vehicles per publicly accessible charging station in our area. Level 2 growth's been really good, and then level 3 growth has kind of slowed, been at a slower uptick, but we're seeing that grow quite a bit too. ChargePoint's the market leader from the data we've seen. Next slide. This is just a look at that map that the state portal provides, and so about half of our stations are in Adams County, and another half are in Weld County, and then there's one station up in Gilpin County. So, and then if you want to go to that next slide, we've actually deployed 3 publicly available stations ourselves, and we think that's about it's about 10% of the publicly available charging ports in our territory. So not a ton, but compared to, you know, the rest of the stations out there, we're maybe about 10% of them. We've seen a good amount of consumption from them, maybe about $6,000 in electricity sales through the level 2 stations, and then about $45,000 in electricity sales through the fast charging stations that we've deployed. And then, yeah, we charge just over like 18 cents a kilowatt hour, but we charge it by hour, and it just works out to be about 20 cents a kilowatt hour for the level 2. And then the DC fast charging is a flat rate of $10 per charging session. Could we go to the next slide, please? Yeah, and then another big part of our EV program that we've deployed is we've branded it United EV, but it's kind of a charging as a service. Members lease the physical charging station from us, and we help them install it and get everything situated in their garage. And then it's a $19 per month fee to the member over a 5-year term. And I think one of the big selling points is that warranty and service is included, and that the members can opt out and unenroll at any time. So we found it pretty convenient for members that maybe aren't as technically savvy. And then the members that are on like a temporary electric vehicle lease, they don't have to purchase their own station and deploy the equipment just for it to be stranded and abandoned when their vehicle lease is over, or, you know, if they're leasing their home, it could also be an advantage there too. So we have about 145, maybe 150 members now enrolled, and one of the other big selling points is we like to encourage members to get on our time of day rate in conjunction with these stations, because these stations will help shift their load of their vehicle off peak, and then they save 50% off on those kilowatt hours that they're charging off peak. And so the capacity of that's about 1.5 megawatts of peak load that we shift every day with these stations deployed. And we see about 350 or 35 megawatt hours in monthly energy through these like 150 stations, which averages out to be about 250 kilowatt hours per member that's enrolled. So pretty good data so far. We started this program in middle of 2022. So and we've actually seen the adoption increase over the past couple of years. So next one. Okay, yeah, and then we also have pretty good, I didn't realize there was a transition, sorry about that. The programs and rebates that we have available, the United EV program, it's decently popular, but we found that our wiring rebates are really popular. So we have a rebate for members to electrify their garage, to put in the wiring and panel upgrades for installing that charging station in their garage. So we'll help rebate their electrical invoices up to $1,200, and then we have also a variety of different commercial rebates as well. It looks like there's a question: can the member get the EV wiring rebates without enrolling? Yes. So historically, that was the case. And then just recently, this past year, we actually made it a stipulation that United EV enrollment was required for the rebates. And that was the case up until last month. And then now this month, we recently secured a grant from the State Energy Office to deploy the wiring rebates back to the entire cooperative. So I think for the next 6 to 12 months, we should have those rebates. Yeah, EV home charge. Good call. That's the name of the rebate. But yeah, so that rebate's available to all members once again for the next 6 to 12 months probably. Yeah, maybe next slide. Oh yeah, this is just a quick snapshot of what those EV home charge rebates are for the members currently. If the invoice is below a certain threshold to install that outlet, then it's either 500 to 250, and then it's 500 to 1,000 if the invoice is above or below $1,200. So, and then there's also a panel upgrade rebate available as well if the member has to upgrade their service panel as a part of that. And this is all on our website too. And then next one. Oh, yep. All right, cool. Maybe about 5 minutes.
All right. Well, we had some good questions in there too, so appreciate the overview. Now we're going to switch gears and we'll hear the perspective of a municipal wholesale utility. And so, Alaina, let me turn it over to you and give us an overview of what Platte River is doing.
Awesome. Thank you, Craig. As slides are getting pulled up, I will thank Tyler for the outline. So the information you're going to see is going to look very similar in formatting, but specific to Platte River. All right, so we'll address the elephant in the room first. The slides do not say Platte River Power Authority on them. They say Efficiency Works. If you'll go to the next slide, Matt, I'll explain why. Thank you. So Efficiency Works is a regional utility collaboration. It's a brand that Platte River and our owner communities use to have united messaging and a cohesive look to all of the programs offered for Estes Park, Fort Collins, Longmont, and Loveland. So you'll see this brand throughout. But before we dive into our programs, I'll give you a little context on Platte River on the next slide. Awesome. For anyone who isn't familiar, Platte River Power Authority, as Craig mentioned, is a not-for-profit, community-owned public power utility for generation and transmission. And we are owned by the communities of Estes Park, Fort Collins, Longmont, and Loveland, and they have their own distribution utilities that they operate. We're headquartered in Fort Collins. We have around 300 employees, have been around a little over 50 years now as an organization, and we serve around 175,000 end meters. If you're talking about it from the Platte River perspective, we have 4 customers, each of those communities, but when we talk about our customer-facing programming that we do under the brand Efficiency Works, we serve all of the customers of the distribution utilities for each of our owner communities. So go to the next slide, please, Matt. Thank you. A little more context about Platte River. We have a goal to be 100% non-carbon by 2030 that we are working towards in our resource diversification policy. We have a peak around 700 megawatts. And as I mentioned, we have 4 municipalities that we serve with our 3 core pillars of reliability, environmental responsibility, and financial sustainability. We can jump into programs on the next slide, or EVs on the next slide. Context, so you can kind of compare and contrast us with United. We estimate that we have roughly 10,200 EVs, or will have by the end of 2025 in our service territory. As I mentioned, we have those 4 owner communities, so we are constantly looking at where they are within those communities. So you can see a breakdown of that in the pie chart in the upper right-hand corner there. Maybe not all that shocking, but good for us to know. That percent split between the communities is actually really closely aligned with the split of our energy deliveries to each of the communities. Longmont's a little overrepresented here and Loveland a little under, so maybe a few more EV owners in Longmont than if it's split perfectly of how we deliver electricity. And then I'll point out in the bottom right-hand corner there, we have a fun graph about Estes Park and how tourism impacts EVs in Estes Park. So the dark blue color there shows the registered electric vehicles within Estes Park service territory. And then the fun orange line that is filled in there shows all of the EVs that are coming into Estes Park via tourism. And we have a member of our team who's put together all of this data on the slide here using a variety of sources, but that one comes from a lot of data from Rocky Mountain National Park. So that's a fun extra challenge that we have in Estes Park. On the next slide, I'll jump into chargers. Perfect, thank you. From a charging station perspective, we have roughly 260 public charging ports across all 4 of our communities today. You can see that trend has been increasing, maybe not quite as dramatically as United Power's, but definitely got a good slope building there. The split between level 2 and level 3 is we said about 30% level 3 and 70% level 2. And then you can see, similar to United, we got ChargePoint with the most number of ports in our service territory. And you can see like Electrify America is like entirely level 3 in our communities. On the next slide, we'll get into our programming. So kind of a compare contrast with United, we are very much so in a space of providing quality education to our customers and have maybe a few fewer rebates than United has going on. But we currently have an electric vehicle information page that provides sources to all sorts of information for our customers, both residential and commercial. On this page, you will also find our EV Buyer's Guide website. It's information to support decision-making. It compares EV and non-EV models. If you're interested, you can go to ev.efficiencyworks.org and check that out. We also have information for fleet electrification on this page. Again, a fleet planner tool, very similar to that EV Buyer Guide, where you can explore available EV models that might meet the needs of your fleets. And then we also include some study incentives that I'll talk about momentarily, and some public level 2 EV charging infrastructure incentives that I'll get into more detail on the next slide. So we currently offer the mouthful that is public level 2 electric vehicle charging infrastructure incentives. And we use all of those words to help describe the fact that we are aiming to offset the cost of the actual infrastructure necessary to install the chargers. We know that currently there are a number of incentives for the chargers themselves, but not necessarily does that always cover the cost of trenching and all of the other logistics that go into getting that charger installed. So we have 2 tiers, one for networked and one for non-networked. We allow these incentives to be stacked with federal, state, other local incentives as well. And we are very focused on publicly available here. So we have a definition for multifamily, but this is definitely not a situation where it's going in a single residential garage or behind a gate for fleet charging, say. On so the next,
we had a quick question before you leave that slide about how you came up with the rebate numbers. How did you determine those amounts?
That's a great question. I will say, unlike the rest of our kind of traditional energy efficiency programs, there is not a cost to conserve energy or a specific target there. We had some informational conversations with service providers and customers to understand what those costs look like, and then made a determination there for what made sense for our budgeting at the time. And I'm happy to talk with you offline on that too, Stefan. Awesome. And we can go to the next slide, Matt. I think we're almost done here. Kind of one of the more unique options we have for our fleet customers is our fleet electrification study incentive. So the goal here is to provide incentives to help offset the cost of a study to be performed to allow customers to understand how might they electrify their fleets. That means what vehicles might meet their needs, what charging infrastructure would be necessary. And we do all of this to allow customers to electrify in a way where they are making informed decisions, and also so that we can collect business intelligence as a utility to understand where these fleets are going, what timelines they are going to be installed under, and how we might need to serve them differently, whether that's with transformer upgrades or any of those kinds of things. So happy to go into that in more detail in our Q&A section, but I believe that that is the end of my content. If you have questions or want to connect afterwards, the contact information on this slide goes to my entire team that does our commercial programs in case I'm stuck in meetings, but we'd be happy to chat with you about any questions you have.
Alrighty. Well, thank you for the overviews. I think that gives us real helpful context as we jump into some of the more specific questions about the development of your programs and lessons learned. And for those that are participating on the call, I just keep sending in questions in the chat box. I think that works really well. And I think our presenters will pick them up, and if not, I'll try to pick those questions up, and it'll just help move things along here. So don't hesitate if you have a question to throw it into that chat box. Alaina, one thing I didn't hear, or maybe I missed this in your presentation, but how long has Efficiency Works been doing the EV program?
It's a great question. Variety of lengths between the different programs themselves, but 2022 is when we really started the transportation electrification programming as a whole.
Okay, so it sounds like both United Power and Platte River's Efficiency Works have been doing the EV transportation for about the same length of time, for about 3 years. You've had the fully developed programs. So to take us back to the development of your program before you were launching your program, and tell us a little bit about how you developed the program. So what did you do to engage with the community, to develop the ideas, and to make sure you had a program that was going to be responsive to the needs of the community, and something that would ultimately work basically for the communities that you're serving? And maybe, I don't know if you want to start, maybe Tyler, if you want to, since you went first with your overview, if you want to jump in and give us United's perspective about how you went about developing the program and engaging with the community, and then we'll hear Platte River's perspective on that. Are you still with us? You may be muted there, Tyler, if you're still with us.
Yes, I'm sorry. 1 second.
Yeah, no problem.
I'm happy to jump in while Tyler is busy there.
Go ahead. Let's hear your.
I'll say each program offering that we have is a little bit of a different program development process that it went through. But holistically, when we looked at transportation electrification as the generation and transmission utility, we looked to our owner communities to ask them, what questions, comments, concerns are they getting from customers? What concerns do they have as utility distribution utilities, as this is increased load, which might impact their ability to serve or impact the equipment that they need to have to be able to serve these loads moving forward. But as a holistic approach, whether it's transportation electrification, building electrification, or energy efficiency, we are always looking at our programs with a multi-pronged approach. Is it good for our owner community initiatives as a whole, not just the utility? Then does it provide support or positive feedback for utility initiatives? And then is it in demand? Are we getting requests from customers? Is it something that customers are interested in, or are we getting a lot of questions about? So when it came to transportation electrification, we were getting a lot of questions that just needed education. There's a lot of misconception about, every home needs a level 2 charger in order to support an EV. That isn't always the case. And so that's why we have our EV shopper tool that is helpful in understanding, which models might be good for you, what kind of charging opportunities are there. I'm a perfect example of an EV owner that doesn't have a level 2 charger and is working just fine with the level 1 at home. And then that process kind of continues depending on which program. I'm happy to go into details if people have questions about specific offerings, but the main crux of our transportation electrification programs for the last few years has been education, because that's what we're hearing our customers need, and then business intelligence for the utility itself. What do we need to know that our customers are doing in order to make sure we can maintain our reliability for those customers?
So were you interfacing directly with the end use customers, or were you having your owner communities do that and filter the information up to you?
It's always a little bit of a combination. So we get phone calls directly from customers and service providers or contractors. Our owner communities also get those same interactions with contractors and customers. We did not do a formal kind of customer engagement type evaluation before we did this. This is more we are hearing a need, we are getting asked questions, how might we serve our customers? So it was a mixed approach, as it always is for us, but not a formal, like, let's do a survey of customers and understand what they are asking for.
Great. Well, Tyler, let's switch over to United Power then, and tell us your story about how United Power went about developing its EV program and what it did to engage with the community to develop that program.
Yeah, well, not too much direct engagement with the membership, but just kind of seeing some of the trends and wanting to be a part of it. Our goal, I think, generally is to try to shift some of the EV charging burden off of our peak load and to the to the trough intervals off peak. But I also think we generally want to facilitate electrification and lower the barriers of entry as much as possible. And so I think that was a lot of our intent with the programs that we drafted, was to allow for interconnection and ease of use, and be that expert source of info on all these different topics for our membership. And I think our goal is to expand our current program to be device agnostic, and to really not require members to enroll in the United EV program, where we provide the charger, but allow them to bring their own device and integrate with our systems that way. Yeah, again, lower the barriers of entry, reduce the friction, and allow them to participate and integrate with our various systems. So that's the hope as we kind of look at expanding that EV program that we have.
So when you were developing your programs, did you have to get approvals of your boards to do that? And if so, what kind of case did you make to the boards to convince them that this is the program that they should be adopting?
Yeah, specifically we did, we had various levels of data on what, electric vehicle consumption could mean for the cooperative. I think, NREL has some really good data. DOE has some really good data out there. We put together kind of our own little homebrewed equation that showed from DOE and DOT data what the average vehicle miles are per day. And it's about 40 miles, depending on the vehicle type. Maybe more so for some of our communities that we have in our service territory. And if you look at the average efficiency of electric vehicles, it's about 3 to 4 miles per kilowatt hour. And so that adds up to be about 10 to 15 kilowatt hours a day for every new electric vehicle that's adopted in our area, which comes out to be about 400 kilowatt hours a month, which is about half of what a residential member would use on our system. So for every electric vehicle that's adopted, for every 2 electric vehicles that are adopted, it's the equivalent of another residential member usage on our system. So I think that really made the case of, we could help assist that and encourage more of that adoption, because it's at the end going to add additional electric sales onto the cooperative balance sheet. So it made the sell pretty easy to the board of directors.
And Alaina, what was Platte River's experience through Efficiency Works? And you had another layer to deal with, because you had owner communities that you had to persuade, as well as your own board to persuade. Tell us a little bit about that process and how you made the case for the development of this program.
So we're fortunate in that the Platte River Board of Directors, in our kind of distributed energy resource programming, we don't have to have all of our new programs go all the way to the board. So we have another working group. There's another set of folks that has a representative from each owner community and Platte River on it. And so we take all of our programs to them. They decide if it needs to go up to the board or not. And fortunately, based on the fact that our programs at this point are very education based and very much so in response to our business and residential customer inquiries, didn't have to go all the way to the board for justification. We're also in a space where, compared to the rest of our DER programs, which include energy efficiency and building electrification, transportation electrification is still a pretty small part of our budget. So it hasn't quite gotten the attention that maybe some of the other things that have a required return on investment or a cost to conserve energy type metric have. So we haven't had to go all the way to the board yet, but so far have been able to work with the owner communities for the programs that we do offer, and are planning to continue to expand those programs over time, which might mean we go to the board eventually.
Yeah. So you touched on something important there, Alaina, in your answer, and that's kind of the cost, the startup costs and return on investment. And there is obviously a program, a capital investment that goes with any new program that you start. So how did you plan to pay back the capital investment? What was the plan to recover those costs once you got the program off the ground?
For us, we have the ability to look at our portfolio of programs holistically, which we know we're very lucky to do that. So we're able to kind of, for lack of better words, offset some of the investment in transportation electrification from really cost-effective energy efficiency programs. But as a whole, we look at it as an investment in business intelligence and knowing where our customers are doing what and how they are doing it, as well as an educational expense for our communities. And we budget appropriately for education, as well as the straight kind of rebates or something that might result in a kilowatt hour saved or a kilowatt hour added to the system.
And Tyler, what was United's experience? How did you plan to recoup the startup costs of your new program?
Yeah, I think our goal was to make it, pretty much, rate neutral in terms of a lot of our incentives and specifically our United EV program. We had that cost recovered on a monthly subscription basis from the members that signed up for it. $19 a month for them to lease that charger, and that pretty much covered all of the capital and the expense outlays that we had for it. The way we were able to pay for our publicly available charging station infrastructure, a good portion of that, at least for the capital costs on the station, came from the Energy Office grant program that they have for, I think it's Charge Ahead Colorado. We utilize those funds, and those stations were deployed in 2021 and 2022. And then our current electrification wiring rebates, those are also through that grant that I had mentioned earlier, that EV home charge grant. But everything else, we've attempted to make it revenue neutral. And then in terms of the public stations, we've been seeing estimated payback period on them is anywhere from probably 5 to 15 years, which should fit pretty well within our typical capital depreciation schedule, for general plant assets. So I think it's essentially rate neutral. Looking at that price of power, for shifting some of that load off of peak, it should be, you know, a net benefit, but it's kind of more difficult to quantify that.
So it sounds like both your programs are not expected to have any impacts on rates. You're not going to have to subsidize anything through rates. They'll be self-sustaining and maybe adding revenue back to your systems as they develop more fully. Is that a fair characterization of what I'm hearing you say?
Yeah.
All righty. So we've talked a little bit about the level of participation that you've seen in both of your service territories. What are your projections for the future? And you know, I think there's a lot of questions that are about in the industry right now, given the impact of cuts to EV incentives and other renewable energy project incentives. How are you factoring that information in, and what are you projecting as far as your growth and participation in your programs?
I can go first. I'd say for our EV shopper tool, or our online tool that allows folks to kind of compare models, we had really good participation starting out and all the way through the end of 2024. We have seen participation drop significantly, and we are seeing that other platforms, mainly dealers, have a lot better information on their websites directly than when we started. So we are anticipating the use of that one kind of dropping off and maybe discontinuing that ourselves in that same format. It is a little bit of an admin expense to have and maintain that. And maybe we have some more generic information on the website that points to other folks who are sharing that information more readily now than they were in the past. When it comes to our public EV charging infrastructure, our participation was initially a little bit slow. We anticipate that for most programs, but we've really seen a number of our electrical contractors who have traditionally worked in kind of retrofit energy efficiency rebates, mainly lighting, are looking to add EV related services to their portfolios, and we're seeing participation uptick dramatically. We actually have one service provider who has an entire public EV charger arm of their business now, and we haven't heard from them any slowdown anticipated from that. Commercial customers are still intrigued and wanting to add public charging to their facilities. And then our fleet services, we only launched those about a year ago, actually like a year and a week ago. And it's been slower than maybe we initially thought it would be, because we were getting questions. But we're thinking that we are right in the middle between all the big players who are trying to electrify their fleets at a national level. They've kind of figured out how they're going to do it. It's more, or how they might do it. Now it's just funding the actual purchasing of the fleets. And then we've got the small, medium fleets that we think we will be serving in the next couple of years. So we think that there's still room for growth there. We know that the state of EV incentives as a whole across the country is changing, so we'll see how that impacts us. But we think that more Class B type delivery vans will begin to transition sooner than some other fleet operations. And if their costs continue to drop and their ranges increase, then we think we'll continue to see participation there from those small, medium-sized fleets that haven't yet figured out how might they electrify.
And Tyler, what are you seeing in United? What's your forecast for the future?
Pretty much along the same lines. You know, I think even though some of the state, well, specifically the national incentives are being pared back, I anticipate that the growth will continue in terms of adoption. A lot of the offerings are pretty, you know, they're at cost parity, if, you know, very close at least, maybe not quite in certain vehicle classes, but I think the market will continue to speak and folks will electrify. And, you know, in terms of like program participation for us, we've seen a pretty good uptick on our United EV adoption over the past year or two, and our hope is that as we kind of expand that into telematics and bring your own device, that we'll get a higher percentage of our existing members electric vehicles enrolled. And then we've seen a couple pretty large fleets in our area electrify their delivery vans, and I anticipate that, you know, to continue. I think some of the larger, there is a trash collection fleet nearby that serves our local area that is electrified, but their station is just outside of our service territory. So more of that'll come, but I think it'll be a little slower on the heavy duty vehicles, and that'll probably take some more time and patience. And I don't think it's quite ready cost parity wise yet.
Yep. So is there any priority area that you're emphasizing or looking to for growth in, whether it's a personal passenger vehicles, fleets, medium or heavy duty trucks? Are there areas of emphasis that you're looking for growth? Or is it just pretty much responding to the market as it develops?
Yeah, that's what we've kind of been. That's what we've been doing. Is the membership is going to drive the adoption, and we can't force them to select any of these technologies. But we've seen them doing it, and just try to have different programs available for them, but also let them be the source of expertise and lower the barriers of entry and friction for them to get those interconnected into our system and play nice with some of our demand response efforts.
Yeah, I'd say similar for us. We'd like to have offerings to support all classes of vehicles and customers in their journeys, and allow us to understand what they're doing and how they're doing it, and make educated decisions about how they go about electrifying transportation, alongside probably also building electrification. We're currently planning an EV charge management program as we build out our virtual power plant. So that's an area of focus of our time and effort, and trying to be a little bit more engaged in the way that United Power has with their programs currently on the residential side. So that's kind of our next thing, is trying to have that roll out next to kind of a mostly residential traditional demand response program, but also that charge management, currently targeting the first half of 2026. So more to come on that.
So one thing that Tyler mentioned, and I think we heard about this during a presentation at the last EV group meeting, and that's the trash collection company that's electrifying its fleet. And I think in both your service territories, you've got a lot of fleet operators that are using various types of vehicles, whether they're taking pickups to make customer calls, or using medium or heavy duty vehicles for their operations. Are you doing anything to kind of target and identify, here's a customer that could really benefit from electrification, and seeking them out and saying, hey, let's, here are the benefits of electrification. We can partner with you and make that happen. Or are you doing anything proactive, or are you kind of letting the market come to you when it's ready to make that step?
I'd say from our perspective, the biggest fleet operators have found us a few years ago and started asking questions. So we've been interacting with them for some time on what that might look like for them. And then when we get into that small medium space, we are, like I said, we have our study incentives available when they're ready and are willing to look at it, but we haven't found those size customers really focused on that yet, or having the time of day to give to us on those. So not any real targeted outreach. We do have our study incentives, have our closed pool of service providers. So they're doing some outreach to customers and learning how they might be able to serve those customers, but we don't have any specific outreach going on to certain customers. All the biggest ones have already found us, and we know what timelines they're on.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree with that. That's essentially where we're at too. Is a handful of the major players have already taken that step and have electrified portions of their fleets, but some of the smaller ones are a little more hesitant. And we found a lot of the school districts, at least in our area, I think range anxiety and vehicle costs are just prohibitive for adoption for them currently. Who knows what the future brings, but that's what we've kind of gotten from some of those discussions. But yeah, the smaller fleet operators, and some of the public station stuff, we have incentives out there for commercial members and residential members to deploy, and then we're we're interconnecting different fleets, throughout the territory, but they kind of have to wait for them to come to us and make that decision before we can force them down the path.
I'd say, I don't know, from United Power's perspective, but if you would like to do it, we'd like to help you do it in a way that's best for you and for the grid as a whole, not so much you should electrify and everyone should electrify. We're seeing that messaging of if you want to do it, here's how you should go about doing it is resonating a little bit more than trying to get people to make the transition who aren't ready to consider it yet.
Let's see, we got a hand raised. Matt, do you have a question?
Yeah, I was just kind of tagging on to that message that you just mentioned about, if you'd like to do it, we'd like to help you do it in a way that's beneficial for the grid and, your assets. I feel like that is a fairly consistent kind of conversation amongst this group in particular. And I'm curious, obviously you all have done a lot of work in that space already, and that seems like kind of a consistent theme across your programs and offerings in that type of way. But, have you noticed anything else in terms of opportunities for that conversation to help, actively support those that have come to you?
One kind of small thing, but I think has been a nice talking point or thing to have. And I think Drive Clean Colorado now has one, so it might make ours a little bit obsolete, but we put together a fleet electrification funding resources, kind of just a spreadsheet. It's a one-pager PDF with all the links. So here's how we can help, but here's also all of the other resources that are available to help you. That has resonated well with a couple of our customers that are saying, we know that you've provided this great education, but the math still doesn't math for me. Are there any other funding sources? And knowing that a number of those are changing, but that has been helpful. And I think Drive Clean Colorado, through their work with the Colorado Energy Office, also has a nice resource for that now that folks could link their customers to.
Yeah, that's a good point. Drive Clean Colorado has been pretty instrumental. We're partnering with them this fall to do a Drive Electric Week electric vehicle symposium at our Carbon Valley office. And so they've been great to work with and a huge help of pushing towards electrification.
All right. We have we've been spending the bulk of our time here kind of talking about the development of programs and how things have been going for the last 3 years. Let's talk a little bit about the future. We talked about some projections about where EV growth might be, but where do you see your programs in the next 5 or 10 years? How would you like to see these programs evolve from what you've already had success with over the past 3 years?
I think I touched on it a little, but we're very much in an education standpoint now, currently working on EV charge management in that residential space, hopefully anticipating that to go to more of a B2G type model over the next years as those technologies develop. And then, of course, rolling that out into a fleet charge management option as well. So going from an education to more of a demand response flexibility type resource for the grid and for customer benefit.
Yeah, I'd echo that exactly. That we're currently in the design phase of a new electric vehicle charge management program to attempt to push more of that load curve off peak for us and get a little bit more active in our control of it. I think we've had a lot of luck with passive control, with pretty clever rate design to incentivize the right type of behavior with electric vehicles in our territory. And then we've also had pretty good luck with our United EV program with scheduling and kind of passively managing that charging as well. And then I think we're really looking ahead to implementing a new DERMS system that'll allow us to manage those resources a little more cleverly and integrate, lower the barriers of entry for that integration. Currently, we're deploying physical equipment and charging stations at members' houses, and then we we've had decent luck with that, but I don't think we'll ever get to the penetration levels that we want to really make a sizable impact on our demand response program. So we're looking to enroll more of members' vehicles by lowering those barriers of entry and maybe flipping the incentives around and kind of encouraging the right type of behavior on our system load.
Yeah, we got a question from Matt here. Whether you would be open to speaking more about the topic of rate design, time of use rates, separate EV meters, demand charges, DERs, et cetera. Is that something that you can go into now? If you have information that you can share with us, or thoughts that you could develop a little bit more on that? I know Tyler, you said yours is kind of in the design phase, so I'm not sure if you're at liberty to share some of that, but any insights that you might be able to share, I think would be appreciated.
I can go first, given that we're the generation transmission utility, so we don't actually impact or design end use customer rates. That they are different in each of our 4 owner communities, and they all approach EV rates a little differently. I believe Loveland is the only one that has an EV or commercial electric vehicle charging rate specifically. Where Collins has time of use rates for residential customers, but not commercial customers, but they do have a variety of demand charges that may or may not support EV charging, depending on what your setup is. So we have the fun that we get to navigate of the rates look very different in each community, all under the Efficiency Works programming. So we do our best to support them in their rate design, but we are not directly tied into that process. So Tyler might have a more specific example that is a little more helpful.
I could speak to it a little bit. We definitely, Craig, you had used the word subsidize previously. We definitely do not want to subsidize any different rate class or specific member, and we definitely don't want to discriminate in that in those different rates. So it has to be kind of an even playing field for all members and in all use cases. But I think we've had quite a bit of luck on some of our time of use rates. We have a time of use energy rate, and then also a time of use demand rate, which is, I think there's not many of those out there that I've seen. It's one of the only ones where the demand charges are higher during certain peak intervals and really have to put some teeth into encouraging that load to shift off peak. And then also encouraging members like you had mentioned, your level 1 station at home instead of level 2. Well, a lot of these vehicles also allow you to turn down that ampacity in the vehicle itself. Even you might have a 10 kW charger rated in your home, but I'm only using mine at 2 kW because there's we have $1 per peak kW charge on my bill, and then I want to avoid as many of those peak kWs as possible. So I shift the load off of peak and then also reduce that demand on the vehicle itself. And every user is not going to do that, but the incentives are there for them to, and their rates available to every member. And I do think that those demand charges definitely do it. Separate EV meters, we definitely don't do that. But I think one of your member communities, or no, actually, I think I don't want to speak too much about it or out of turn. It's one of the co-ops up north. They're using that telematics data to bill EV kilowatt hours based on what the vehicle itself is charged. So they have like a discount on their kilowatt hours. It's effectively a time of day rate, but only for the vehicle itself, and they're getting that billing data out of the vehicle. You're right there. It's Booter Valley. But that's kind of, I think, our approach. We kind of make it device agnostic, and then just try to encourage the right behavior with some of the thresholds set up in that rate.
All right. Well, this is still an evolving area, and some utilities are starting their programs, some are well underway. But you've got a lot of experience here based on the last few years that you've been operating. So tell us, what are some of the biggest challenges that you faced in implementing your programs? things that might, be common to some of our other utilities are going down this path. What challenges have you experienced?
So with our current programming, funnily enough, we're trying to educate customers, but educating them about our programs. And I think that's a typical challenge when it comes to customer programming. And then for us, it was I guess, continuing conversation, but there are so many different ways to approach transportation electrification. We've been talking about it for, a decade now, and trying to figure out which approach best fits our community and their needs, whether that is, incentives for EV chargers within residential homes or not, whether we wanted to own chargers in the public space or not. We've had a lot of conversation about what structures are going to be the most benefit to our end use customer, to the grid, and best use of ratepayer dollars. We've settled on the current approach, which is that more education and then public charging, and then moving into more of that demand response charge management type programming. But we know that looks different for every community. So I would say the hardest thing was trying to figure out what kinds of programs we wanted to offer and why, what that value truly was to our end use customer and to the grid as a whole, so that we could be mindful in how we're using ratepayer dollars to accomplish transportation electrification in a way that is mutually beneficial.
Yeah, similar challenges, I think, that we're faced with there. I think the biggest challenge that I've had is patience. I felt like I've wanted to get the cart before the horse on a lot of this, and wanting to rush it and do everything everywhere all at once. And I think over time I've seen that the market's going to speak for itself. Folks are going to adopt this technology if it is in fact superior, and just kind of let that happen on its own accord. And I think our membership kind of knows what's best. They know where they need stations or where they need interconnections or more equipment, and kind of just let that process play out. And then really, try to make it as seamless for them to get connected, and as painless and reduce friction as much as possible. So I think that's kind of been my approach, or hopefully. Another challenge we've had some folks try to game some of our rebates and programs, and utilize them in a way that wasn't really exactly how they're designed, and so I think that is just another something to think about when you're designing some of these things, is that if there's a loophole, they're going to find it and exploit it. So thoughtfulness on some of that on the front side can go a long way.
So when you're designing a program and you got it all laid out on paper, you've done your studies, and you said, okay, this is the path we want to go. Sometimes things don't turn out the way you expect. There's things that come out of left field, surprises, or just plain doesn't work the way you expected. Did you find any elements of your programs as you were going forward that just didn't work out the way you had expected that they would, or would wanted them to have?
We haven't come across any yet. Again, we're in that education focus for the most part, other than our public EV charging infrastructure incentives. So it's a little bit harder to find the things going awry when we're providing education. I will say we've watched a lot of other programs learn those lessons, and are probably why we're in the space that we are in, of not providing direct incentives or owning our own public charging stations or those kinds of things. But I think that as we move into charge management and more of that demand response type programming, I'm sure we will learn along with everyone else exactly how to do that and where it goes awry. I think we found more kind of fringe cases in some of our programming, and some interesting technologies have come out of especially our public level 2 charging infrastructures. We learned about smart outlets a few months ago that we're trying to figure out how we might address that, if that is actually a useful solution for some of our customers. But we fortunately, knock on wood, haven't had anything go too far out of bounds yet. I think a little bit towards Tyler's thoughts on not trying to rush things and being thoughtful about how we design programs has allowed us to mostly avoid those things.
Yeah, I'd agree. Echo a lot of those comments. Yeah, big challenges. Not too much. Recently, we've had a lot of our physical charge ports damaged in some of our publicly available stations, and I think it's got to be user error. Someone dropped it. We don't think it's vandalism. But yeah, that's been kind of a challenge. We've had to go through and replace a handful of our publicly available ports, like the whether it's the Chatamo or the the other standards. They've just been damaged. I think so. Something to think about is we failed to budget have a maintenance budget associated with our stations, and now we do.
Yeah, that may be something you don't anticipate, that the various use, misuse, and abuse that goes into those things when you make them available. And I think as you get more market penetration, that becomes a bigger issue, and people may become a little bit more casual about stuff, and you may have more of those issues that you got to deal with. But maybe kind of doing the flip side here. Are there any parts of your programs that exceeded your wildest expectations and did much better than you had anticipated?
We'll say we were not anticipating a service provider to build an entire arm of their company around owning and installing EV charging publicly in our communities. So we're interested to see how that goes. That will likely be the lion's share of our budget for this year and maybe next. It's just all of the work that they're doing and their ability to connect with our incentives as well as the Charge Ahead of Colorado incentives could mean a substantial increase in public charging stations in our community in a much more concentrated way than we thought. We thought they would be a little more like one-off. Every other commercial customer might start a conversation with someone and a variety of folks would come install EV chargers, but that one service provider is really finding a turnkey solution and finding places to put them. So we're excited to see how that continues to progress.
Yeah, that's interesting. Must be nice. No, I think probably just like the gradually then suddenly trend that we've probably all seen, in the electrification space. It was, gradual increases, and then these past year or two, it's been suddenly. We've seen a lot more uptick in interconnections, and I think another big benefit we've seen, not specifically the local owner operator, but we have seen a ton of publicly available stations that our membership themselves have been deploying, and so we feel like the coverage is a lot better than it's ever been, and in part because chicken and the egg. Well, now there's a lot more vehicles, and so there's a use case for it. So that's been nice.
We did get a question, and this goes back to the previous topic we were addressing about the damage to the charging facilities and equipment. Is that something that you have insurance coverage for? Or
Yeah,
can you around
it's a great question. So if you read the letter of the warranty contract, that yes, this is in fact likely covered under warranty, but the service provider is claiming that it is vandalism, and so it's very likely not vandalism. It's just it malfunctioning and breaking under normal usage, or someone simply dropping the cable as they're trying to plug or unplug. But yeah, no, not covered under warranty, unfortunately. Loophole.
What about security, though? I mean, do you have like video security, the proverbial Ring doorbell camera, or something that you can put around those facilities? If you do get a question of like, is this vandalism, or is this just ordinary wear and tear type of stuff?
Yeah, so 3 of our 4 public stations are actually just at our offices, and we do have security footage, but we've not been able to nail down when the event occurred for the couple cases that we've got. It just, you know, was it last week? It's a ton of footage. It's hard to say for certain, and they are used fairly frequently. So it would difficult to. No, we haven't gotten the footage, but we do have cameras. But they're PTZ, and they're probably pan tilted or zoomed somewhere else. Would be our guess.
Right. Yeah. Did you want to add anything to that one, Alaina?
We don't own any public chargers that are out in the community. We have a couple on Platte River's headquarters site that are owned by the city of Fort Collins. So I don't have direct experience with that personally. Have heard lots of stories. There's a great presentation at the Rocky Mountain Utility Exchange last year on Xcel Energy's owned charging stations. If you're interested, I would recommend you reach out to them. But no direct experience there because we don't own public chargers ourselves.
All right. So we've had a great discussion here and covered a lot of ground. If you were starting all over and designing a program, what would you do different this time around than what you did, or do you feel like you pretty much followed the right path and have seen the success you expected?
I'd say for us with the education side of things, I mean, there's always more marketing that can be done to get more use out of those websites that we own. But overall, I think we are glad with the approach that we've taken on education first and kind of watching things roll out, not going all in on owning public chargers or putting. We've done a few pilots of level 2 residential chargers, but didn't go all in on them yet because we wanted to make sure that what we did roll out was going to be, as Tyler was mentioning, available to most folks, maybe removing some of those barriers to participation. And I think it set us up well for our next iteration of EV charge management programming that'll go through our VPP and our new DERMS. So I don't think we have too many regrets to the current approach. I think we've kind of taken it, as Tyler was saying, kind of slowly to our approach to transportation electrification. But I think we'll have a lot to learn here soon as we get into the world of charge management.
Yeah, same here. I don't think too many regrets. I think we're generally pretty pleased at like the adoption we've seen in our rebates and just electric vehicles in our area, and as well as the usage of our stations and the adoption of United EV. It's all been pretty good, upticked quite a bit. So I think, slow and steady would be maybe just the difference, and we're definitely going to learn quite a bit more when we try to deploy our DERMS, our wider DERMS electric vehicle program. So that'll be we'll have quite a bit more probably lessons after that. Hopefully it goes well though.
All right. Well, that is all of the questions that I had, and I don't see any others. I guess we got one from Matt. Are there any recommendations you'd give other utilities? Any last minute words of sage advice you'd like to share?
I'd say really focus on what your customers want or need, or what your utility needs are. I think there are a lot of, like Tyler was mentioning earlier, a lot that can be done in this space, and it's easy to want to do all of it and want to have the same number of programs as your utility next door, but they may not be the best fit for your community at that time or ever. So really sitting down and trying to understand the why behind your transportation electrification programs before you jump into them, I think will allow you to have better outcomes and make better use of ratepayer dollars.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I would probably, we've had good luck at our stations that we've deployed, but most of them are at our 3 different offices. So that's maybe an anomaly, I would probably recommend hesitation on deploying your own publicly available charging stations if they're off premise. We've had a ton of luck interconnecting our members' stations, and we've been able to deploy much more infrastructure, helping them along that path, as opposed to brute forcing it and taking on all that risk ourselves. So that would probably be what I would recommend.
Very good. Any other questions from the participants on the call today?
Well, if not, I'm glad to ask a few others. I guess one straightforward question I'm curious of is, do you have requirements for like purchase of networking, let's say, for the incentives that you offer? Like similar to how we have requirements for Charge Ahead, let's say, for the purchase of years of networking and warranty or data reporting.
Jump in. For our level 2 charging infrastructure incentives, we have a tier that does not require any networking. And then the tier that does require networking is required to be networked capable. We do not currently have any reporting requirements tied to that. That'll probably change as we have our VPP and DERMS platforms set up and can actually have some integration, hopefully, with those charging stations in the future, but currently there's no requirement beyond the essentially Energy Star listing for that level 2 charger to say that it is network capable.
That's a great question. I just looked, and our public level 2 charger rebate does require it to be network capable. I would have said no. Yes.
And I put a note in the chat. I forgot in the acronym for the PRPA offering. It said non-networked at the end of one of those. I forgot about. I guess one other question is on the conversation of there was clearly an emphasis on education. Obviously, I think that's pretty key and something that we've been thinking about a lot for opportunities to expand that as well throughout the state with Recharge and with Drive Clean and with additional programs. I think I'm curious to hear about the opportunity for potential partnerships, if that's something you've looked at, like community organizations, dealerships. I know Matthew Groves from CADA wasn't able to join, but that was something that I was going to ask him about as well. Is, do you feel like there's an opportunity for partnerships with community-based organizations or dealerships in your territory?
From our perspective, we'll shout out them again. Drive Clean Colorado has been great in our community. We did a joint presentation with them to our contractors earlier this year. And then as we roll out our managed charging programs, we have, I'll call them thoughts. I don't know if a plan is, it might be a little too far, but thoughts on how to engage our local dealerships and trying to get that education coming from other angles that aren't just from the utility directly to customers, but nothing solidly in place yet.
Yeah, Charge Ahead Colorado. Yeah, that's been pretty critical, I think, for a lot of the deployments that our members have done across the territory. We work with a lot of our local municipalities in some of their efforts because they're a leader in deploying some of this at their facilities. And then, yeah, Drive Clean Colorado has been pretty instrumental, I think, with a lot of things. They have really good partnerships with local dealerships, and they host events in and around the area where they do the ride and drives, and they get some of those cool, fun toys that only the dealerships would have access to. And so they've been pretty crucial. I'm trying to think of some others off the top of my head. I can't, but yeah, I think those types of relationships are really important.
All right. Any other questions from anybody? Sorry, I blinked out there. I accidentally disconnected myself. Had to jump back in. Sorry about that. So, well, if we have no further questions, I just want to take a moment to thank Tyler and Alaina for their presentations today. Very informative, a lot of great information. And, also want to thank Matt for all his work in helping put this together as well. And thank everybody for taking the time out of the day to join us. So,
and Craig, before we close off, just to add to that, I know we've got a couple minutes left, and I've gotten a couple messages about like new business or announcements from folks. So if there's anybody that has announcements, I know one, Mike King, if you're still on the call, be great for you to jump in as well, and then also leave it open for any others as well.
Thanks, Matt. Yeah, and I don't mean to keep anyone any longer than necessary, but I wanted to share with the group that in case you don't know me, I work here at the Colorado DOT, and one of the things that I help to support are the Colorado transit agencies that are looking at electrifying their fleets. Coming up in September, the CASTA conference is going to be held out in Avon, and it's actually the same week as the Rocky Mountain Utility Exchange. So one of the things that we've been brainstorming is how we can develop a CASTA session that maybe bridges the gap between transit fleet electrification and utility support for those efforts and vice versa. So I just wanted to kind of put that to the group in case anybody has ideas or experience working with their own transit agencies about what is good, what is bad, what could be improved, and how we can help educate the transit agencies on, what would make it easier for you guys to work with them. And then vice versa, I'm going to be talking with them about what is it that what kind of support or data or whatever are they not getting from utilities that they feel could be improved. So that's a pretty open-ended question. If you have thoughts on it, I'd love to hear them right now. I'd love to have them, if you want to send me an email, or if you'd just like to be involved in that session, we're going to try to schedule it for the Thursday of that week so that anyone that's at Rocky Mountain Utility Exchange, if they want to stick around, they could pop over to Avon and hang out with the transit folks in the afternoon and participate in an event. So I'll leave it at there for now. If people have initial reactions, happy to hear them. Otherwise, I'll put my email in the chat. Feel free to follow up with me, and then we'll be sharing some more information about this as we get closer to September.
Well, thanks, Mike. If anyone's interested, feel free to give a shout to Mike. And if there's some utilities that want to go ahead and join the next day after Rocky Mountain Utility Exchange, happy to include you as well. Any other kind of updates or announcements from anyone? I think Bonnie, if you're still on, and then Jenny from 4Core, Chris from 4Core. We've got a few representatives from the Recharge Colorado program. So I think if you all want to introduce yourselves and if you have any upcoming events, that was kind of like a consistent topic that came up, and opportunities for utility partnerships with you all.
Yeah, I can mention something briefly. Tomorrow we actually have a beneficial electrification open house with La Plata Electric Association that we're attending. They're going to be covering everything from EVs to heat pumps to everything that they're trying to do for beneficial electrification. And I also just wanted to mention, this is more of a question for you, Mike, than a comment for the CASTA conference. I just know from previously working for Durango Transit and also some of the work that we're trying to do now for the Fleet Zero grants and also for these Impact Accelerator grants. It's really hard down here because the transit agencies are so fragmented. Like Durango Transit's really well along with their fleet electrification plan, but other organizations like Roadrunner Transit and the other very smaller ones that mainly have shuttles, or like we get a handful of questions from like the Powerhouse and other nonprofits in town that would like one electric shuttle or van or some other type of vehicle. What support you could offer through CASTA, especially with Roadrunner, to help us connect with them to, I don't know, better promote the Impact Accelerator funding as well as Fleet Zero, I guess. Roadrunner in particular is a challenge to connect with.
Yeah, no, Jenny, that's great feedback. And I think similar to what we hear in other parts of the state, I think one of the potential opportunities of this CASTA session, or maybe just more generally, is, that CDOT and the Clean Transit Enterprise have planning grant funding for transit agencies. And a lot of that so far has been kind of modeled on the idea that individual agencies apply for that. Then they lead a plan using consultant support funded in large part by the state. But one of the things we've started exploring is, like, could there be a more regional approach to that planning of multiple agencies? Ideally, under the umbrella of one or more supportive utilities and nonprofit community groups. Like, could we combine forces so that we're not expecting each individual local agency to take this on, but we group them together, we help them through that as sort of a cohort or a regional approach? Would that actually benefit people more and result also in more cohesive transit service in general than might exist in certain parts of the state where it is a bit fragmented? So that is one idea we've kicked around for this CASTA session, is like, can we break into smaller groups of regions and pair them with their utilities and try to figure out, like, what would a joint implementation of this look like, instead of expecting everyone to figure that out on their own?
Okay, that's awesome. Thank you.
And Bonnie, oh, there you go.
Yeah, everybody. Bonnie Trowbridge from Drive Clean, Colorado. Thank you all for the kind words, and it's nice to know that our resources are being used, and really would love your feedback if there's things that we should add or things that work really well for you. We'd really appreciate your thoughts on that. I think one thing I would love to, I'll give you guys like a scoop. Drive Clean we are planning our 2025 Drive Clean Summit and Expo. We have just signed a contract with Mile High, or Empower Field at Mile High, for October 22nd and 23rd. So mark your calendars. We're going to be bringing in as many vehicles, electric vehicles, and any kind of clean transportation that we can get there. And we're going to be putting people behind the wheels and having all kinds of conversations like we like to do at our summit. So, and we have a bunch of other ride and drives coming up between now and then. One of which is at United Power. So I don't remember the exact date of that. It's August sometime, but I can put that in the chat here in a minute as well. Or you can check our calendar, so it's listed on there. So anyway, thank you for the time.
All right. Well, yeah, thanks for jumping on. Thanks everybody for staying on. I know we extended this conversation because we pushed back the last one to have this really in-depth discussion. And thanks again to Tyler, to Alaina, and Craig for sharing, and Craig for moderating. A lot of really awesome information and super helpful for this group. Really leading the way really in Colorado, especially to hear from cooperative and member municipal utility perspective with Platte River and the way that each of those differentiate, but also the various similarities. And I think this discussion is really, a great time for that with where things are at, just kind of the uncertainties out there, and federal versus statewide considerations, and opportunities to be able to lead from the local level up. And think about, new ways that we can partner and share resources. I know that the state is really open to hearing more input from you all about ways that we can continue to support you all as well, beyond even just the programs we already have with Charge Ahead and the EV home charge program that was a pilot that United Power is participating in, and that is going to be relaunched going forward. So we're certainly, looking to hear more about opportunities to participate and share, more programs with you all, and more opportunities for partnership. So appreciate it again, and thank you all for joining. Looking forward to the next time.